Out there, the celebration was still ongoing. But Sestroya and Sion returned home earlier, together with Okara's children. They put the twins to bed and headed to their room to change. But their night was only just beginning. It had taken a long time. Many friends in both low and higher places, a lot of research and care. But they knew exactly where Agare would be tomorrow. One of them, that is. Agare's roots lay in Arata, but he had never learned to accept the simple life below. Tormented by relentless ambition, from his earliest days he strove to find a way out. Those that knew him said he was fearless, to the point of recklessness. He didn't heed the warnings about what awaited those that dared to try to make it in their den alone. And so one day, he cut ties with everyone he knew, and reimagined himself as a member of the upper society. Something about him, be it the persistence, a kind of charisma, or the sheer conviction that that was where he belonged, led him to succeed and be accepted above. Sestroya couldn't help but see a little bit of envy in the eyes of those who used to know the man and knew his story. Still, Agare wanted more than just to escape the Arata. He wanted his name to mean something. But that seemed to be out of reach for someone of his status. That is, until a mysterious man came to back him up, and everything in Agare's life changed. Those that got to see the two of them described their physical similarity as uncanny. Above the ground, the older advisor was rumored to be Agare's kin. In Arata, such rumors had no place. Agare's family was still here, and none of them had ever seen or heard about the strange man. A coincidence, they agreed. Similarities happen. But Sestroya and Sion knew the truth. For a while, they were on the trail of the advisor, the Agare who cast the spell and whom they had to kill to undo it. But they didn't know enough to find and corner him, before suddenly, about 2 years ago, all traces of him disappeared. If there was anyone who knew where the man was now, it would of course be his younger self. And so, they focused on finding that one first. Every year, at the beginning of Kiritian, he paid tribute to Insere in an obscure sanctuary built decades ago by his father. It was an annual pilgrimage, and the only opportunity to find Agare unguarded. If they left today, they would be there on time. It was time to take off the masks they put on to function here. But at this point, it was hard not to wonder if they were still masks, or just their faces. Ligren took Kyr's hand and brought it to her lips for a gentle kiss. "Talk to me about Mem," she said. "Remind me of something that's not blurred in my memory." Everything fades, doesn't it? They found him in the sanctuary, hunched over a tribute basin. Where in Sestroya's favorite storybooks, a grand battle would take place, in her own story, there was room only for cold reason and careful calculations. No heroics, no risk. A needle gun with paralyzing poison. Agare straightened up and pulled the needle out instantly, but it was impossible to be fast enough. The poison had entered his bloodstream, and in a few moments it would take over his body. He fell to his knees and began channeling energy into his neck in hopes of stopping the damage, but Ses and Sion knew that he was not trained in medical magic. It was a futile effort. When the poison kicked in and he tumbled over, Sestroya and Sion showed themselves. Agare struggled to get back on his feet, but his legs were refusing to work. He propped himself up on his arms and raised his head to face the pistol that Sion was holding in his shaking hands. Yes, though this Agare looked much younger than the one that had come to Memn, the resemblance was impossible to miss. But squirming on the ground, trying to fight the poison, he was nothing like the showman that had visited Mem to toy with its people. "Who the fuck are you?" he spat out. "We don't need to harm you," Sion said, as if he was automatically delivering a practiced line. His eyes were dead focused on the man he held at gunpoint. His breath was shallow. "We are looking for the other you." Agares' eyes widened. They became fidgety, restless, as if he was searching for something that would tell him that he had misunderstood, that Sion had not said what he'd heard. "Who are you?" This time the question sounded meek, laced with fear more so than fury. Sestroya shook her head no. They had the upper hand. They owed him no answers. "Where is he?" she repeated Sion's demand. "You want to prevent the scourge." In spite of his position, Agare refused to bend. "You can't. You won't." "Where is he?" Sion stepped forth and pushed the gun to the man's head. Agare's nostrils flared. "He's ashen," he said. "Don't lie. We know he's alive." "He is anything but. I drove the blade into his heart myself." Sion looked to Sestroya, who just shrugged. The original Agare had to be alive, because the spell was still active. "What? Did you need him for something else?" The man's words were almost snide. "Don't worry, it doesn't matter. The scourge, the invasion, it's all been set in motion already." Sion unlocked the trigger of the gun, and Agare flinched. Despite his best efforts to mask it, his resolve was fading. He did not want to die. "We don't want to kill you, but we will," Sestroya said hence. "You will not. I can see it in your eyes." He looked to Sion. "And I could just lie to you to make you leave. What's stopping me?" "It's a rare poison. It won't kill you for several days," Sestroya said. "Still, you won't live long enough to have an antidote distilled. But we have some ready. It's do or die, Agare." For a moment he kept silent, in thought. Then he said, "I'm not lying. He came here to get the power when he was still young and healthy. He meant to bestow it on me, and then die, leaving me with the fruits of his labor that he himself had earned too late." "He said he wanted to die?" Sestroya asked. "Yes, that was the original plan," Agare replied, clearly unaware of what that meant. But that changed soon. One day, he said to me, "What makes us one? You are my past, or rather you used to be, for my arrival and interference interrupted that creation. I, as I stand here before you, will never come to exist again. What makes two instances of one person the same, I wonder? And when do they become different people? Is it the sum of many experiences? Or, quite the contrary, is it a single, separate thought that appears in one mind but not the other that splits them apart? All it takes is an uneven tile of flooring that makes one feel discomfort under their foot while the other stands straight. That little difference is all it takes to make the two variants of one person move apart, become their own. I am unique. You are not me, not anymore, and I won't live through you. You realize, don't you?" I did. Of course I did. Agares said. We were not one, but we came from one. And so I killed him first. What did it all mean? Was the old Agare not the source of the spell? Sion, Sestroya called to him. I don't understand. I don't think he's lying. I don't either. Her lips began to tremble as she tried to frame a response. But she couldn't. She did not understand. What if they are one? Sion asked. What if both instances of his soul can hold the spell together? It could be. What? Agare asked. What do you mean? Sion met Sestroya's eyes. They had to. They couldn't risk not doing it. They had promised. Sion was begging her, in spite of himself. Even if he'd never voice that plea, he was begging her to do it. And she would. She'd do anything for him. She took the gun. Don't, Agare pled. Don't do it. She closed her eyes and pulled the trigger. But the world did not end.